Should I pay off my mortgage or invest my money? Hey everybody, it's Joe Schneider. I do retirement planning and wealth management. This is the second part of a two-part series where we are exploring if it makes sense to pay off a mortgage or use that money to invest. If you haven't seen part one yet, I recommend watching that first since it will provide a lot of context to what we'll be covering in this video. So as a reminder, the scenario in the first video, we received an inheritance and explored if it made sense to invest the inheritance or use that money to pay off the mortgage. We found that the decision that led to the most money largely depended on the interest rate of the loan and the years remaining on the loan. Generally speaking, the lower our interest rate and the more time remaining on the loan, the more it made sense to invest. In this video, we will run a similar comparison, but instead look at a situation where we have extra income to pay down our mortgage. In this scenario, we are using a slightly different calculator to factor in the extra payments we can make to our mortgage. For the loan, we're going to use the same variables as before. So a $1 million loan for 30 years with a rate of 3%. We're also going to take a look at the 15-year mark. Lastly, we are assuming an extra income amount of $1,200 a month and an investment return of 7%. You'll probably notice right off the bat that our graph on the right looks different than the previous scenario. We'll dive into the graph in more depth in just a sec. Okay, let's take a look at our options. First, we'll consider using the extra income to pay down our mortgage. So we're currently paying $4,000 a month toward our mortgage, and we are increasing that amount by $1,200. If we continue paying an extra $1,200 a month indefinitely, we will pay off our mortgage in 132 months, or roughly 11 years, instead of 15. So using this money to pay down our mortgage allows us to pay off our mortgage 4 years early. This also means we have freed up $4,000 a month for 4 years. Since our other option is to invest the extra money, we're going to take this freed up money and invest it for the remaining 4 years. So an investment of $4,000 a month plus our extra income of $1,200 a month for 4 years produces roughly $300,000, which is our net value. Remember, we need to include this step to make sure that the same amount of money is being mobilized over the same time frame. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a fair comparison. Now let's take a look at investing our extra income instead. So we have an extra $1,200 a month, and we invest that in the stock market, which produces around $240,000 after 11 years. I divided the calculation into two sections, the period before the loan is paid off and the period after the loan is paid off. Before the loan is paid off, each option uses $1,200 differently, one to pay down the loan and the other to invest. After the loan is paid off at the 11-year mark, both options use the money to invest. The only difference is the option to invest from the beginning still has mortgage payments after the 11-year mark. So if we take our $240,000 investment and continue investing $1,200 a month for the remaining period on our loan, which is 4 years, the investment produces $370,000. Now remember, in order to make a fair comparison, we need to subtract our remaining mortgage payments from this amount, which leaves us with a net value of $170,000. So with these specific variables, we have more money if we pay down our loan. But let's take a look at the graph and see how adjusting the variables can change our calculations. Real quick, if you're enjoying the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. I make these videos based on questions from people like you. If you have a finance-related question, feel free to submit a question to the form in the description below. Okay, let's make sense of this graph. So what this is showing is how the number of remaining years on the loan affect our net values. The red line represents the net value of using our extra money to pay off our mortgage. The blue line represents the net value of investing our extra income. If we take a look at the 15-year mark on our graph, we can see the two net values we computed, $300,000 and $170,000. The red line is above the blue line. But what we can see is that if the years remaining on our loan is greater, there actually comes a point where it makes more sense to invest our money. That intersection point is around 26 years. The yellow line simply represents the number of years it will take to pay off the mortgage with additional mortgage payments. In other words, it's just a visual representation of the time component of the first half of our calculation on the left. It's the same value as the months until paid off early. So let's pick a number of years where the blue line is above the red line and see what our calculation shows. Let's go with 28 years. So as you can see, our numbers updated to reflect what 28 years remaining looks like. Investing our extra income produces around $800,000, and paying off our mortgage produces around $750,000. We have an extra $50,000. So does that mean investing is the right decision? Again, not necessarily. Every person is different, and only you can decide what dollar amount makes investing the extra income a worthwhile strategy. Now let's tweak some of the variables and see what happens to our graph on the right. Let's increase the rate on the loan to 6%. Just as we saw in the other video, the red line is always above the blue line, meaning you will always have more money if you pay off your mortgage. Lowering the investment return has a similar effect. Let's revert to 3% on our loan and now adjust our investment return to 5%. Again, the red line is now always above the blue line. Now I want to mention some variables that I didn't include in either of these calculators. One of them is interest payment deductions. Just to clarify, a mortgage is split between payments toward principal and payments towards interest. Payments toward interest are tax deductible. However, this is only helpful if your total tax deductions exceed the standard deduction, which is the dollar amount the IRS allows you to subtract from your income before calculating your income tax. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts of 2017 made a number of changes, most notably nearly doubling the standard deduction, making it unnecessary for most taxpayers to itemize. So the standard deduction, even when itemizing mortgage interest payments, is typically the better deal. Another is tax savings from investing the money into a retirement account. For example, let's say we want to use $3,000 of our income to put into a retirement account. We may be able to put the entire $3,000 into the retirement account without paying taxes on that amount. That is, if we can defer taxes on that amount. However, if we use that money to pay off our mortgage, that $3,000 is reduced by our taxes. So we actually have less than $3,000 to use toward our mortgage. So depending on what we do, we may have to factor in tax savings. I know, right? Clear as mud. I'll give you two more variables. Private mortgage insurance, which is only applicable if your down payment is less than 20%, and property tax, which varies by state and can also be itemized like interest payments. If your situation requires a more in-depth exploration, it may be good to consult with a professional. So in summary, answering the question of whether or not it makes more sense to pay off your mortgage or invest is actually decently complicated, and the amount of money you stand to gain may be worth taking the time to run the numbers. If you'd like me to run the numbers for your situation, feel free to fill out the form in the video description. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.